Euro 2012 was one of the most intense tournaments of all time. Spain was by far the team to beat after having conquered the previous Euro and the World Cup, but since every big European nation was present, their dominant grip on football was clearly under threat. In the end, this tournament gifted us stacked groups of death, iconic moments, memes, and lots of drama. But despite all of that, plus its recency, this Euro is just an afterthought in the memory of most football fans, so today I'm here to change that. In this video, we'll take a trip back to 2012 and revisit every dramatic moment, standout performances, and the epic showdowns that happened in that cold summer, and by the end of it, I'm sure you'll want to go back to watch some of its matches. But before we start, if this isn't the first time watching this channel, please consider subscribing. With your help, we've already achieved 2,000 subscribers, and now it's time to aim at 10,000. Now without further ado, let's get right to it. Before the competition even started, there were already several noteworthy performances. Estonia and Montenegro had stellar qualifying campaigns, finishing above Serbia and Switzerland respectively. However, their runs were cut short in the playoffs. On the other hand, Ronaldo almost missed this tournament in the first place, but a second leg win against Bosnia in the playoffs eventually guaranteed Portugal's place among the best in Europe. Because you see, unlike the current 24 teams format, only 16 nations were allowed in. And since this tournament was hosted by two countries, Poland and Ukraine, only the cream of the crop would get a chance to be in Euro 2012. And while it made for a much shorter tournament, it also created one of the most stacked editions of all time. There were almost no filler teams, and due to the luck of the draw, the less imposing sides ended up paired together. Poland, Russia, Greece, and the Czech Republic in decline formed the pre-balanced Group A. On the flip side, there were not one, but two groups of death. Germany, the Netherlands, Denmark and Portugal, three former winners plus the national team of the best European player, made it almost impossible to predict who was going to progress. The other one was Group C. The last two World Cup winners, Spain and Italy, a Croatia squad that had shown that they could hold their own against anybody, and the Republic of Ireland. Group D was way more balanced than what it might appear nowadays. France were still trying to bounce back from an atrocious World Cup, while England were going through massive internal conflicts, with several established names either missing or having a less important role due to their actions. So given Ukraine's status as hosts and Sweden's good form, the first two spots were pretty much up for grabs. And if this looked enticing on paper, trust me, it was even better in reality. Although Group A had no big names, the four minnows gave us an unpredictable showdown. Russia trashed Czechia in the first match 4-1, but in the end, the Czechs would be the ones advancing in first place, while Russia would finish third and head home sooner than they hoped for. While Greece, despite going to the last match day in last place, beat their opponents 1-0 and also progressed to the quarters. Kinda unfair to Russia and Zagoyev in particular. 90% of you watching probably have no idea who this guy is, but in this tournament, he looked like prime Marchevin from 4 years prior. Too bad he never got a chance to play in a top club. Moving on to the deadliest group, we also got ourselves a back and forth battle for qualification. To paint a better picture, Germany beat both Portugal and the Netherlands in the first two matches, but they could still be eliminated. As Denmark shocked everyone by beating the Dutch in their first match and almost surprising Portugal after drawing the match 2-2 in the last minutes of the game. Portugal would score a late winner though, and that result guaranteed that anything could happen in the last round. In the end, Ronaldo finally showed up and won the match for the Portuguese, while the Germans confirmed their superiority against the Danish and guaranteed their first place. The Netherlands, however, lost every match, finished last, and went down as the biggest disappointment from this tournament, especially considering they had been in the World Cup final 2 years prior. Group C finished the way most fans expected, but Spain and Italy's route to the quarters was way tougher than what they expected. Following an initial draw between the two giants, both Spain and Italy struggled against Croatia. The Italians drew their match against the Croats, which meant that going to the last match day, Croatia and Spain were actually in better position to qualify than Italy. However, despite their best efforts, Croatia would concede a late goal against Spain, and given Italy's victory against Ireland, it would be Spain and Italy progressing to the knockout rounds. In the remaining group, France and England would overcome their internal issues, and despite a slow start to the competition where the Ukrainians showed some promise, the French and English experience in this type of tournaments was enough to coast them to the quarters. From 16, we were now down to 8. And what a way to kickstart the knockout rounds. Czech Republic, despite no longer being on the same level as they were during the late 90s and early 2000s, proved to be a massive headache for Portugal, who were only able to put them away with a precise header by Ronaldo. Greece vs Germany was more than just a game. It symbolized the complex interplay of politics and sports. Greece, grappling with a severe financial crisis, found itself on the field against Germany, a nation viewed as both a rescuer and a source of austerity measures that contributed to the hardships faced by the Greek population. In the end, Angela Merkel added insult to injury, celebrating all 4 goals that sealed the German win. Spain vs France is always an instant classic, but in this era, La Roja were still superior to Les Bleus, and Xabi Alonso emerged as the unlikely hero, scoring a brace to guide Spain to the semis once again. In the last bout from the quarters, Italy faced England, and in typical English fashion, the Three Lions succumbed in a thrilling penalty kick shootout. But hey, this fall would be quite tame compared to what would happen in the next 2 tournaments. Either way, the semi-finals were set. Germany would meet Italy once again in this stage, 6 years after their heartbreaking home soil, while Portugal would try to avenge their round of 16 loss in the last World Cup at the hands of La Roja. Could Ronaldo finally fulfill his destiny? Could he be the one to dethrone Spain? During most of the 120 minutes, it really felt so. Nobody had ever come that close of eliminating Spain since they became the most dominant force in 2008. Ultimately, both nations' fate would be decided on penalties, and without Ronaldo having the chance to take his kick from the spot, Spain would eliminate Portugal. 8 years after his heartbreak in the final, the Euro Cup continued to slip right through CR7's fingers. In the other match, Italy would continue to be Germany's Achilles heel thanks to an outstanding performance by Balotelli. It was a career-defining performance by Super Mario, who by that point was considered by many a future legend, but unfortunately, that night would only be marked as the peak of his career. 23 days later, Kiev was ready to receive the final match, and the team to beat was still unbeaten. Despite not having their greatest goal scorer, despite having passed 4 years since they began patiently terrorizing every nation with their devastating tiki-taka, the outcome was still the same. Spain had emerged victorious in every instance, but still, some hoped Italy would be the ones to dethrone Italy. After all, La Squadra Azzurra was the one nation Spain hadn't technically beat. They eliminated them on penalties in 2008, and in the group stage of this Euro, the Italians held them to a draw. But what we got instead was a gigantic ass whooping by the Spanish. 4-0. The most lopsided final in Euro Championship history, and a true testament to how good the Spanish golden generation really was. Ultimately, despite all the fears regarding the stadium's constructions and potential racism by the hosts, this tournament delivered almost 1 month of outstanding action by the European elite. You had dramatic matches, memes that will live forever, and a defining performance by the winners that solidifies them as, in my opinion, the greatest golden generation of all time. Nobody could stop them even in the worst day, and as fate would have it, the only thing that would eventually beat them would be time itself. Still, it's also important to look past their win and acknowledge other iconic performances from players of other nations. Alan Zagoyev, João Moutinho, Mario Balotelli and Andriy Shevchenko, who despite being unable to qualify Ukraine to the knockouts, still managed to end his career on his terms after being deemed a flop for the past 6 years. It baffles me how this tournament isn't talked about more, but hopefully I've encouraged some of you to go back and check some of its matches out. And that is it for the video. If you want to watch more tournament rewinds like this, click here. Don't forget to leave a like so I know you want to watch more content like this, and subscribe to never miss the most interesting football discussions, stories and top 10 lists. Thank you for watching till the end, I appreciate you and I will see you soon.